Welcome to the Shift podcast, where midlife, medicine, and mindset meet. We're breaking the silence around women's health and simplifying the path to feeling strong, clear, and better than ever. Hosted by me, Heidi Swap, with insights from Dr. Vohn Watts and stories from real women, the Shift podcast is here to challenge the narrative, empower you with information, and create a new vision for your next chapter.
All right, welcome back to the Shift podcast. We have Dr. Jack Wolfson, a good friend of mine. He is known as the Paleo Cardiologist. It's a great book. If you don't have that, I would highly recommend going and getting it. But we're going to let him get into it. But just to give a little bit of background, I've known him for a number of years here. And this is the kind of respect I have for Jack is Dr. Wolfson is, what was it, a year and a half ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. I probably hadn't seen you in over a year. My father-in-law was having some heart issues, and I picked the phone and called Dr. Wolfson and called his cell phone, and I think he picked up on the third ring. He's like, "What's up, man?" And it's just, that's the kind of guy he is. So huge, just love the guy, love what he's doing. But the real thing it was super intriguing from the very first time I met you. You're married to an amazing woman. Obviously, she's a chiropractor, so she has to be awesome. But you're a full-blown, a cardiologist, full-blown Western medicine, and then you've had this journey and transformation. So kind of as we get into it, we'd love to just kind of have you go into just your background and your journey and where you started and how you came to where you are now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks so much for having me on. And feel free to pass out my cell phone to anybody who's got any heart concerns.
He already texted it to me, so
I always answer on the third ring for sure. I like to say I was born into the medical world, if you will. My father was a cardiologist. I'm in my mother's womb. I'm listening to cardiology stories, in utero. And then ever since I can remember, I wanted to be just like my father and become a cardiologist. And that's exactly what I would do. Finish up 10 years of medical training, become a cardiologist, move from Chicago out to Arizona, and join the biggest group in the state of Arizona, where I would eventually become a senior partner. And my career was just totally taking off. And unfortunately, my father is a cardiologist. He was getting sick. And ultimately, his sickness, which was diagnosed as like a Parkinson's type disease, started off with depression, morphed into Parkinson's symptoms, movement issues. And then the Mayo Clinic would diagnose him with progressive supranuclear palsy. And they said, "We don't know what caused this. We've got no treatment for this, and he'll be dead within 3 years." And my father would die a tortuous, cruel death in 3 years. But right at that time, call it serendipity, call it divinely ordained, as I believe, God put this 29-year-old chiropractor in front of me. And I met her through some interesting circumstances, and she told me all the reasons why my father is sick and dying. She told me everything, and Mayo Clinic has no idea why my father's sick and dying. The 29-year-old doctor of chiropractic, she's got all the reasons. And I listened to what she had to say. Number one, I like to say that she's smoking hot, so that played a big role in my attention span. But number two, it's like, again, like it clicked for me. It made perfect sense. And ultimately, she said, if you don't want to suffer the same fate, and it may not be PSP or Parkinson's, it may be a heart attack or a stroke, but everybody's got their something. If you don't want to suffer the same fate, you got to change. You got to change the way you eat, live, and think. And that's what I would do. And then I guess maybe to wrap up this point is that she would tell me I would need to become a DC. I'm like, DC? You mean doctor of chiropractic? I mean, that's, I spent 10 years of medical training. And she said, no, not DC doctor of chiropractic, DC doctor of cause. And I do think we all have the ability to become that doctor of cause, because unfortunately, the mainstream medical doctors are not doctors of cause. God bless the men and women who work in emergency rooms and trauma centers, but when it comes to prevention, they have nothing. And that's, obviously what I try and do is prevent, treat, and reverse cardiovascular and other chronic diseases.
So what is right now, what would you say is one of the big things? I know it, and I'm just going to say it.
Heidi doesn't. We just have to pretend that.
I'm just going to ask the question then. So when I first met you and we were talking and going through and seeing the things, obviously we also lived we were in that detox world. And one of the big things you started actually talking to me a lot about, I already knew about mold and heavy metal toxicity, environmental toxins, and all the harmful things those can cause. But you brought the correlation of mold and heart disease. And that was fascinating to me because that was even new for me. And so, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that live in the South, live in the Midwest. We lived in Kansas City for 13 years. There's a lot of mold because it's so humid over there. A lot of basements flood like every year. And so mold is pretty rampant. And it's one of the most missed things by doctors. And it's no fault to these doctors. They're just not trained to order these kind of tests. So could you kind of go in and kind of explain some of how that correlates to heart disease and kind of even go into really, this paleo, this whole idea, like what you do. And we're not saying everybody go paleo. I'm just saying this is a great, interesting stuff. I'm just saying I would love to get your perspective and why you made this shift and how you make the correlation to all these things with heart disease.
Well, I appreciate, obviously, your intelligence and and your entire background on really what I would call root cause cardiology, maybe we'd say root cause health issues. And so many doctors of chiropractic get that. And my intention of telling people is just make sure you're working with a holistic provider. Like start with the doctor of chiropractic, start with a holistic MD or DO or naturopathic medical doctor. And that's going to be foundational. And then if they can't necessarily figure it out, or maybe they would say, well, I've tried everything in my wheelhouse to figure it out, then you can go see, maybe a specialist or something like that. But these are the practitioners you want to see, the people who understand that it's the violations of the eat well, the live well, and the think well that leads to sickness. The medical doctors, it's just a pharmaceutical first approach. And that's what we need to say is, hey, it's really pharma and surgeries last, not first. But there's so many women who are, especially women. The women are the canary in the coal mine. The women are the ones who are in the house most of the time. The husbands are out of the house. So if there's a toxin in the house, it affects the woman more. I also believe that the woman is the canary in the coal mine because that would be our kind of Paleolithic way of warning the female body, hey, this isn't a place where you want to get pregnant. This is not a safe place. Maybe, in years past, it was pollution at the time, or, hey, let's, this area here, it's full of metals, or some other maybe it was just some harmful air, qualities that would have been going on. But it's a way to determine that for the women, it's not a safe place. So let's not get pregnant and let's work on moving on. So this is where like the women come in, and the women have all these different symptoms. They get skin issues. They get weight issues. They get gut issues. They get told they've got anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. But there's always a root cause for that. And that's what we do is doctors of cause, is find where these things are happening and then work to fix those. But I do find that one of the major offenders undoubtedly is not only water damaged mold, but it's also water damaged bacteria. It's bacteria that grows in a mold in a water damaged home. And I know you understand this, obviously. It's definitely a problem in human environments. Like it's 100% guaranteed you're going to have it there. And even in places like where I stand right now in Colorado or in Arizona and in Utah and Idaho, California, even drier climates, we say to people, do you have running water? Do you have a toilet? Do you have a sink? Do you have a shower? Do you have a laundry machine or a dishwasher? Do you have an HVAC system? Do you have issues with condensation on your windows? And and even then, Vohn, this as well, and Heidi, the lumber gets delivered. The popsicle sticks get delivered. They were sitting in areas where there was, wetness and dampness to it. We left northern Idaho where they're just doing a lot of deforestation, a lot of logging, and the logs sit outside for months and months, sometimes years at a time. And in order to keep them from warping, they spray them with a fire hose to keep them nice and moist. So the problem is really fundamental. Now, it also goes back to the Bible. This goes back to the Hebrew Bible in the book of Leviticus, where Moses is talking about what to do if you live in a mold home. And what Moses is saying is that you have to remediate that home. And then the rabbi comes in to inspect the home. If it doesn't pass, then you got to tear the house down. And the doctors 3,500 years later today don't have a clue. Don't have a clue. We never learned this in 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, 3 years of cardiology fellowship.
What question? You got some question on mold, because toxins and stuff is new for you, right?
Like, it is new for me.
So this is like a new world for Heidi, even learning about mold and environmental toxins. But like, what are some of the symptoms that somebody could see with mold?
Well, and let me say this real thing too, Heidi, so this is abundantly clear to you and everyone else. All disease is from two things. Name the disease, right? You can talk about psych disorders, you can talk about heart, cancer, brain, autoimmune, gut, all of it. Excess weight, all of it. Everything is from two things. Too much bad stuff and not enough good stuff.
Let me see that right there. So I don't know if you know this, Jack, but I released my book a couple months ago, and the entire book is based off my foundational protocol that I developed for cell core biosciences. I don't know if you knew that was my protocol. Mm-hmm. And it's that too much bad stuff, or not enough of the good stuff.
Not enough good stuff.
Or a combination of both.
And it's like, and even when you're going through chiropractic school, it's like if they tell you that kind of thing, like in the beginning, or even if we're all in kindergarten, and it's like, today we're going to talk about how to be healthy. And what we're going to talk about is let's get more good stuff and less bad stuff. And everyone, all the 5-year-old kids, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about the good stuff. Right? And so we'll talk about good food and sunshine and sleep and movement and exercise. And we'll talk about meditation and prayer and mindfulness and gratitude. And let's talk about the bad stuff. And the bad stuff typically is going to be this, not eating well, or bad foods and artificials and chemicals and air pollution and EMF and plastics and phthalates and parabens and then we're going to talk about mold and other environmental, and bacteria and water damage, and so what do you do for health? You reverse it, right? You get more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff, but it really is a beautiful, simple thing. And the medical doctors, they don't get it because that's just not how they're trained. It's like if the three of us went to travel, to China. Like we're going to be walking around and people will be speaking to us in Mandarin and we'll be like, wow, what are you talking about? And oh, look at these 3 American idiots. And we're like, we're not 3 American idiots. We were never trained in Mandarin.
Right.
So that's just how the medical doctors are, right? I mean, you could talk about the best, and most prestigious doctors in the world. They just know what they've been taught. And they've always been taught that, pill and procedure model. And that's just the way it is until we change it.
I've listened to other podcasts that you've been on. And I wonder if you could just explain, like, the way that Dr. Watts introduced me to you was like, he's the Paleo Cardiologist. Would you just explain what the word paleo means?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, so my book is called The Paleo Cardiologist. And I wrote it as I was starting to, I had already been on this journey for several years, but it was really the idea of not only paleo nutrition, because we can all argue about nutrition and everyone likes, but it's also this Paleolithic lifestyle. It's the fact that our ancestors were outside the majority of the time. Paleo, by definition, means old Stone Age, kind of before the what is often called the agricultural revolution. We would call that the agricultural, devolution. It set the humanity back. And, again, it's kind of like you got the biblical version, the evolutionary version, but you have to think about our, deep ancestral hunter-gatherer ancestors, and to think that these were really the pinnacle of human existence. But that's the idea of paleo. So it's paleo nutrition, hunter-gatherer foods into a modern world, maybe. And maybe to summarize this real quick so people, again, we don't speak in generalities, that paleo nutrition, in order, seafood, free-range grass-fed meats, eggs, pasture-raised eggs. Obviously, everything's only high quality. I don't eat anything else, and Vohn knows this when I go to these events and stuff like that. Like I don't, I'm wearing organic cotton underwear. We take this lifestyle very seriously. So it's about seafood, it's about free-range grass-fed meats, it's about eggs, it's about if you do dairy, preferably raw, certainly organic, and then there's plenty of plants. I'm not the carnivore cardiologist, I'm the paleo cardiologist. So we eat avocados and coconuts and olives, and we eat nuts and seeds, and we eat fruits, we eat vegetables, we consume sweets, would be fruit or raw honey. That's my go-to sweetener. And I guess the only difference is that on my paleo version, there is coffee on my paleo version, and we drink organic coffee pretty heavily. So at least, when I say we, I mean me. My wife will typically have a cup or two in the morning with some raw cream, and raw cacao would fall into that mix. Chocolate really is a seed, the cacao seed. I like potatoes. I think potatoes are good. So let me say, maybe to summarize it in this way: always organic, plenty of seafood, plenty of regeneratively raised animal products, and gluten-free, I think, is a good place for most people to start. Maybe once you kind of encompass all these other things, you can kind of reintroduce things like fermented sourdough. But that's the food category. Obviously we can talk about the water that we drink. Fasting is obviously very beneficial, and maybe also to say this too, is that again, like all the artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors, they're all absolute poison. So we got to get those out of our lives, and just keep it as ancestral as possible.
So let me just ask another question. So don't forget what you were going to say, because if I stopped, I would forget what I was going to say. So I'm kind of coming from mental health side. And so 10 years ago, I lost a son to suicide. And that was kind of my first look, like, I thought I was doing everything right. And I kind of had to start to check myself, right? And then kind of like you, my mom was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia. And the way I was raised, the way that I was taught, the way we did was you go to the doctor, you're obedient. You might not understand, but you do what you're told, and it's going to work out. And then that didn't work out, right? And so then I started saying, okay, wait. And then I started my kind of menopause situation. I'm like, I don't feel good, and this isn't working for me, so I gotta look. But in that mental health journey, we would talk a lot about tribal living, and we would talk a lot about how, from this paleo standpoint, or like how essential people were to each other in a tribe, and how you had purpose. And if you didn't do your job of getting the water, then people would suffer, which I think is so insightful, especially because as we are moving forward, we're not taking the beautiful, wonderful things about our history and about our evolution and combining about the great things that we've learned. I want to ask you, in the conversations I've heard, which I haven't heard everything you've talked about, but you talk a lot about the hunter-gatherer, the man's version, like the man's job and the man's role. I wonder if for a second, I'm impressed with how you talk about your wife in a couple of the conversations, and I've heard you talk about your story, and you have praised her so highly, and your love for her and your appreciation what she has brought to you and the partner that she is. I wonder if you could just talk about that masculine, feminine interaction and partnership from a paleo standpoint, because now, like, we want to be equal, and we want to be treated the same, and we want to be just as good, would you just give me your thoughts on that?
Well, I will say this too, and I as a father of 4 children, the loss of what you have incurred is beyond even words. Like, I could sit here and cry at the drop of a hat at the thought of that and what you all went through.
Thank you.
And the fact that, again, I'll speak in generalities, that it's all preventable. It's society that is all, it's society and all of the again, if we look at suicide, we'll just go back to our little mantra, right, in Dr. Watts's book, right? Too much bad stuff, not enough good stuff. So if the children get more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff, then we're not going to have these things. So if the brain is on fire because we live in mold or plastic or artificial sweeteners and colors and flavorings or processed sugars, or the brain is on fire because the person doesn't get enough seafood like our ancestors did. I mean, just an infinite list of things. Now the children don't stand a chance. So how do they stand a chance? It's because of the mother. The mother is the protector. The mother is the defender of the child. That is the mother's job. And being a mother is the single greatest job in the entire world. Like, there's nothing more important than that. Nothing. I'm a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. That's laughable compared to the job of the mother. And it should be held up to the highest standard. And yes, when you talk about equality, well, you know, I'm the hunter and I go out and I defend and I get the food and I build the shelter. Yeah. And I bear the children and I raise the children. Now, of course, there's a lot of overlap in there. I mean, the wife, you know, the woman may go out. But yes, I mean, it is that. And for some reason, society has, you know, just relegated it to the stupid housewife type of thing, you know, Marion Ross on Happy Days or sitcoms or all this stuff, you know, here's the little housewife, you know, whatever, the happy homemaker, and you know, husband comes in, throws his feet over the chair, and the wife says, oh, well, you got to do this. I mean, that's it's so horrific, you know, what has happened in that scenario. It is the most important, and the men have to support them, and the men have to support the women nonstop, 100%. And yes, you know, we work all day, and then we come home, and when the woman's like, here's your kids, like, we accept that, and we love that, and we embrace that. And one thing I would say about here too is that I wrote a blog post many years ago. When you were dating, you talked about a lot of things. You talked about your religion. You talked about your political affiliation. You talked about hobbies that you liked, right? You know, I like to do crafts, and I like to do crafts. Okay, cool. You know, did you talk about how you would want to conceive children? How you'd want pregnancy to be? How you'd want to raise those children? Did you talk about vaccines? Did you talk about home birth? Did you talk about homeschool? Did you talk about attachment parenting? Oh, by the way, if we have children, the children are going to be sleeping in our bed until they are old enough to safely go into their own room. And that may be age 4, 5, 6, 10, 12. Oh, no, I would never do that. Well, then you're not the right person for me, because I guess I would take a little bit of argument, if I may be so bold or brass or really insane to make a comment, but I would take issue with, I believe, a lot of the biblical teachings, in the sense of, yes, you can say that God comes first, and then it would be your marriage comes first, because again, you have to dedicate yourself to the spouse, and again, if you have a good marriage, then that will trickle down to the children. But I would have to say again, it is ultimately the children that come first, because they're the ones who are defenseless. They're the ones who can't do this on their own, and you have to take care of them first and foremost. And they're all these things are all extremely important, but. And again, we just live in a society, I'll tell you one more thing. I'll wrap up that comment, and happy to talk about it because there's so much there to unpack. My mom comes to town and she says, I was the worst mother. I was the worst mother because she hears us talk all the time, right, over the years. I was the worst mother. I ate whatever I wanted in pregnancy. I gave birth in a hospital. I took the, epidural and yada, yada. I fully vaccinated you. I circumcised you. I bottle fed you, with some cheap, formula. I didn't breastfeed you. I put you in your own room and let you cry it out. And when you cried it out, I would come in and throw chocolate chip cookies over the crib so you'd shut up. And, and I'm like, okay, listen, it's time for all of us to kind of like let our guard down and say, okay, we made a lot of mistakes. And we can rationalize all those. My older sister did it this way. My husband, we can rationalize all that. But it's about, okay, we made mistakes, but let's go forward. What would we do differently going forward? So if someone interviews you, Marlene Wolfson, I did it this way, but I now realize that was wrong, and I recommend you do it this way going forward. Like, let's let go, because especially when it relates to injections or things like that, women tend to really hold on to those beliefs, and not that men don't, but they hold on to those beliefs really strongly, because admitting that you made a mistake is very difficult. It's very difficult to release that, but that's, I believe, the first step in recovery, and say, hey, I didn't know any better. I trusted my doctor, all these different things, but going forward, now I know the truth, and maybe you can't have any more children, but can we make an impact on people going forward? And even as you are right now, Heidi, sharing this stuff, right now on a podcast, like this is the difference maker. I did it one way, and we're going to do it a different way.
Well, and it's interesting because, I think for a lot of women, and I talk about this with women, you have your kids grow up and go away, and then you start to your whole life has been dedicated to being a mom, and that's your identity and it's your passion, and then you kind of start well, they don't care what you think, or that whatever, and now, just like where I am, I'm like, okay, I don't want illness. I don't want to get put out to pasture, but I need to matter to myself. And as you start going through this menopause situation, the perimenopause or menopause, and things start to look different and feel different. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast is because my mom, and then I'm looking at my family tree, and all of the women in my family, memory care, dementia, Alzheimer's situation. And you know what? I just figured I was on that track. Like, what choice did I have?
But you made a shift in there.
And then all of a sudden I was like, wait.
You made the shift. You made just like he was talking about, your familial history of eating very low fat, right?
Right.
So you always thought, don't eat fat, you don't want to eat fat because you don't want to get fat, right? Which is ludicrous. We know that now. And then look at your diet and stuff changing.
And I'm listening to even you talk, and I'll tell you what I have said to myself my whole life. I hate fish. Hate it.
But what I would say to that, Heidi, is, and I say this, is like, it's time to put on... I'm listening to you,
I'm like, holy crap, I got to eat a tuna steak. I don't know what I'm going to do.
It's time to put on your big girl pants, okay? It's time to put, I know you may not love seafood, but you know what? Sometimes you got to say down the hatch, because in Hebrew, it's kind of like, we would say, bless this, to health. We say, l'chaim. You eat the fish. You eat that bite of wild salmon roe, sardines, anchovies. I am a shellfish eater, and I love the taste of it. I always have. But it's just kind of like, this is anti-dementia food. When you eat that, you are preventing dementia, because dementia is not a genetic problem. Yeah, there may be some genes, but it is all man-made. Those genes exist for a reason. There's genes that would lead to predisposition, but something has to trigger the genes. Violations of eat well, live well, think well. So what do? Get more good stuff, less bad stuff. Family history is true because we eat, live, and think like our immediate ancestors did. But your ancestors from the days of the Bible, they were not developing dementia. They were not. They live long, happy, healthy lives, and it is totally preventable. The woman has to have passion. The woman has to have a sense of purpose. The man does too. So what is my sense of purpose? Obviously, my purpose is I want to be the best husband, and I want to be the best father, and I want to be the best cardiologist, that I can be. And other people may not be able to impact millions of people like we have the potential to do through podcasts and stuff like that. But other people, maybe they just want to be a good spouse or a good parent or a good brother or sister or a good member of the community, good member of the church, or whatever affiliation you go to, expressing that gratitude. And one more thing, let me say this. The concept of the kids fly the coop, the kids leave the roost. Our ancestors never did that. Vohn Watts comes from a big family, and back in the day, they all lived together forever. Nobody said, I'm going to leave here and move 1,000 miles away. That never happened. So when you lose that tribal mindset, which maybe, again, we can go conspiratorial and say, that's just what they want us to do because it leads us to be depressed and therefore we need to take Prozac. But we've got 18-year-old, 13-year-old, 7 and 4, and yes, I'm 54, and I was changing diapers, at the age of 50. Our preference is that those children never leave us. There's no plan where we're like, well, it's time for you to leave the house now and go move 1,000 miles away. Now, our 18-year-old son, he is very determined on finding a young female and starting his life with her. But our preference, of course, for that is, in the tent next door, in the house next door, on the same property. Why would we want anything different? We would never want that. And again, it's just kind of a fault of this modern lifestyle. It's not anything else.
And you look at different cultures, right? You look at I look at my wife is Polynesian and she comes from Hawaii, and you see 2-3 generations in one home. And some of that is cultural, some of that is because it's so expensive, but there's studies coming out showing that grandparents that live with family, they thrive better and they live longer. And you look at other cultures, like in Italy, they always call I have a lot of Italian friends. They call the Italian guys these mama boys. Why? Because they don't leave the house until they get married. So if they're 29, their mom's still cooking them food, still making their bed, still doing their laundry, and they don't fly the coop. They do this. And I even had this conversation with my wife a while back because we were looking at, you get these things that come across Instagram and it's look at this huge castle you could go buy in Italy or in Spain or wherever, right? And you start looking at some of these very, very ultra wealthy people. And they don't they have these big, huge, castle mansion, manor type things. And they have 4 or 5 families all living in one humongous building. You know what I mean? So even there's this cultural thing even within that group of, high elites that keep that family close. It's very interesting. We've changed it here. It's kind of 18, you got to move out, get on your own. And you're just you don't know anything. We just, the last podcast we did, we met with a neuropsychologist, and she just told us their brains aren't even fully developed till around 26, and you're trying to move them out at 18.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Pretty wild.
I also think a lot of women my age, as you're starting to try to figure out what your purpose is, I think this role of grandparent is so essential, and has been since the dawn of time. And as a woman, being fit enough to get up and down off the ground, being mentally capable of having productive relationships with your children. So sometimes those relationships with your kids and your in-laws and and then how that affects your relationships with your grandkids, that availability and women my age and becoming their older, like not discounting the value that they bring to their family. Obviously, kind of knowing where the boundaries are, I kind of get that, but I think that role of grandma is going to just become more and more essential as our society is becoming a little bit more fragmented. We know that the mom is going to hold this family together. And so she's got to believe in herself. She's got to take care of herself. I wanted to ask you, when you made this switch, you were maybe 35. Is that what you said when
Yep.
this happened for you? And you're now 54. How do you envision yourself as an 80-year-old?
Well, that's, really, it was kind of like, I don't want what happened to my father to happen to me. And again, I may not have got PSP, Parkinson's, I may have had a heart attack. Everybody's got their something these days, and we better do something as the individual really to fix it, because we definitely can't depend on society. The woman. Menopause, I think, is all just a modern construct as far as the difficulty of it, the mental and the physical and the hot flashes and all these things that kind of go along with it. It's all just because of man-made poison. It's all serious menopause is because of violations of eat well, live well, think well. So we need to get more good stuff.
And
less
I have
bad
eaten
stuff.
Oreos along this whole entire train ride. So
Yeah. Well, I
have to take responsibility for my Oreo eating.
Okay. Well, first of all, there are Paul Newman, like Newman's Own, Vohn, you know those. Newman's Own, they do make organic Oreos, so you can get those.
Okay.
And life, and
I'm putting olive oil in my brownie mixes. I promise.
No, coconut oil.
Oh, right.
Coconut oil.
I actually just learned that recently, that coconut oil is better.
No,
okay.
coconut oil. The women should be the matriarchs of society. They should be the old wise women, the medicine women of the like they're helping to deliver the babies. They're helping to raise the babies. Mother has 2, 3, 5 children. The grandmother's right there. She's helped. The great grandmother is there. These are the keepers of history, the women who know how to do
Keepers
crafts.
of history.
That's what they do. And again, it's just society is against us, and we just need to, bootstrap and just kind of go against that and say, no, I am a vibrant member of society and of this family. I'm not saying it's easy. Again, it's difficult. And as you said, sometimes, you can't control the woman who your son marries, and your son marries a woman who maybe has different ideas, and now you're the mother-in-law. There's some dynamic that's there. My mom grew up on a street in Chicago. And basically, the entire street was her extended family. Her grandparents lived in the flat above her, and 2 doors down, was a set of cousins, and they all got together, and they had to make those relationships work. It's not like, okay, well, my sister lives in Las Vegas and I live in Colorado. If we don't agree with each other, we don't have to talk to each other. They went back in the day. They went to the same grocery store. They went to the same church or synagogue. They had to learn how to get along. And again, it's a shame, but you got to find that sense of purpose, the passion, the gratitude. Hey, listen, I've done some fantastic things. I made a lot of mistakes, but it may be the person who I am. I'm very grateful to our Creator for where I am right now, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities to continue to be a contributing member to society moving forward. And it may even be just, well, what are you doing for the world, Heidi? Like, what's your passion? Well, maybe my passion is to have a podcast, with Dr. Watts, and to get this information, because you are going to save a lot of people. As we get this information out there, we're going to save a lot of people. And that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, I look at grandparents like, what is a grandparent? They're just they're next level parent. You know what I mean? Because I even think about it now, like with my young nephews and nieces that come over and a glass gets spilled and you can see the parent like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, whoa, no one's hurt. That's good. Like, no big deal. And I think back when I was a parent, I'd freak out. And I'm like, why was I freaking out as a parent? Like, nothing happened. Right? And so it's like, what is a grandparent? Just a really good parent who knows what is important and what's not all that important, And I even remember, even from a health perspective, like, I'm glad you talked about that, because here's a couple of things. One, talk about men and women are different. Well, I'm telling you right now, I'm stronger than my wife and she's smarter than me. I'm the doctor in the family, but I don't treat my kids. My wife, literally, she's texting me today because my daughter, which is pretty amazing. She got selected. She's going down to the Olympic Training Center tomorrow. She gets selected from there. She'll represent the U.S. in rugby in New Zealand. She's sick right now, and she's got swollen lymph nodes. And it's my wife that does. My wife has a whole process. She does lymphatic massage on them. She does these different things. She does this whole thing. And you want to know what? These kids turn around in like a day. I don't do it. As a doctor, you think it was the doctor that did it. It's her. And I think back when we first had our child, and something happened, like you were saying, Jack, is like, there's no, without the grandma there or great grandma there, who already know, because things have been passed on and how to deal with this or how to deal with that. We're scrambling and we're getting on the phone, and I'm on the phone with my mom. Like, well, what do we do? Right. What do we do? Well, and my mom's like,
yeah, well, Vohn, obviously you adjust your daughter when she's available to you, and obviously she gets adjusted,
absolutely,
and that helps all the lymphatics. The other thing too is that we live in this age of information. Like, we can all just go on, obviously before it was Google, and now it's places like Chat GPT, etc., and just say, what are natural treatment strategies for swollen lymph nodes? Like, that's the kind of mindset we should do. And it's not like we're trying to necessarily be doctors, but at least we're trying to be informed. So if that we do decide, hey, she's kind of sick, let's take her to a medical doctor, let's take her to an internist or to an ear, nose, and throat, specialist, and that person says, okay, I want to put her on antibiotics, and you're like, I don't necessarily mean to second guess you, but I'm going to second guess you because it's my daughter. And I just read on the internet that we could try, garlic, or we could try inhaling eucalyptus. Well, and 50 other things. So what, so like those kind of, we are in that age of information, and we always want to question the doctors too. Is this is not the 1970s where it's like my way or the highway. This is a matter of, oh, you want me to take a statin drug? What's the benefit? Don't just tell me, don't look at me and say, if you don't take this, you're going to have a heart attack, stroke, or dying. Give me the numbers. What are the percentages? If you take a statin, if you take an aspirin, if you take chemotherapy for a cancer or radiation, I want numbers. If I do this, what is my 5-year chance of dying? If I don't do this, what is my 5-year chance of dying? I want numbers. And the beauty of it now is that you could just go into your phone and pick up the numbers right in the doctor's office and fact check them. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty cool thing. Now, you're going to upset a lot of doctors, but hey, you're not there to make friends with your doctor, right? You're not there to make friends. You're there to take care of your own. And that's, and we really live in that age of information. So it's very exciting.
Well, and that's the thing I thought, like with COVID, I've talked about this before, regardless of where people were opinions on COVID, the one thing it did that was positive is it did wake people up to going, you know what, maybe I shouldn't just listen to what I'm being told. Maybe I should do some of my own research. And so people are becoming more inquisitive, and they're becoming more interested in looking up research and becoming more informed for themselves. Because at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your kid's body. It's not the doctor's body. It's not I'm the doctor. It's not my body. It's like, it's yours. So really, at the end of the day, you should be the one that's responsible. And go. There's plenty of information out there. ChatGPT even makes it even crazier easy now.
I was going to ask you that. It was one of the questions that I kind of was thinking about. You talk a lot about the historical benefits of learning from that paleo time and the eating and all that. I wondered, what is your favorite thing about the modern world that you feel like adds to your life?
Well, I mean, I would definitely say, I mean, listen.
Maybe Chat GPT, but.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, information is very exciting to have that kind of stuff. Obviously, I look at it, and I'm sure, Heidi, you get this too. Like, how do we get around, back in the day? Like, you had to stop at a gas station and ask for directions. You had this big old map that you would unfold. I mean, I think about that now, and it blows my mind on things like that. The ability to secure food, like, you're in the mood for wild salmon roe and you get that shipped, from Alaska or Pacific Northwest, or you want unvaccinated field harvested bison from Wild Idea Buffalo up in South Dakota, and like next day it's there on your doorstep. Right. So there are some amazing things, along with that, and the fact that we can educate, but it's really, we have this amazing God-given body with perfect genetics. And when we give that body what it needs and take away what it doesn't, that's the strategy. And there's nothing on the forefront that is going to change that. I can't, listen, 100 years from now, maybe even sooner than that, I don't know. Like, we all swallow a capsule and we live forever with zero sickness. Like, that day may come, but that day is not here. That day is certainly not here. Sure. So, we're rolling with nature. We're rolling on this one with giving the body the tools that it needs. But it's, there's a lot against us. There's a lot against us. And back to, what you said too, Vohn, it's also, again, it's a freedom thing. It has to come down to two things. Our freedom to discuss these, like, hey, let's have a podcast and let's talk about whatever we want to talk about. So the freedom of speech and discussion on this, and then the freedom and autonomy over our own bodies. Listen, if you want to poison your kid, I'm obviously against it. I think it's child abuse. But I guess it is your right, because we have to go down the freedom line, because you can't tell me what I'm going to do to my child and how I'm going to raise my child, and whether or not they have to go to school, or whether they got, injected, or where they swallow pharmaceuticals. Like, again, you take, if you want to take care of you, take care of you. I'll take care of mine. It's freedom.
Yeah. And that's one of the powers that we still have, and
here in the U.S.
We're trying.
It's slowly dissipating throughout the world.
And it's something we're fighting for. And we just, we fought over it, for the last few years, during COVID. And yes, I guess we're grateful that we live in a country where we have, this. And, and hopefully, again, people are waking up to this fact, worldwide, of really just kind of reclaiming our health naturally. So,
I appreciate you taking the time. We might have to reschedule and chat with your wife sometime.
Oh, she's great. She's
and hear her perspective.
Obviously absolutely incredible. I owe everything to her. I've often said, from the stage, that she saved my life, and she'll come back and she'll say chiropractic is what ultimately saved my life, because it is her father as a chiropractor who instilled these beliefs in her, and she just took it to much, much, much greater levels about, and again, my wife, Vohn knows my wife, and my wife is absolutely brilliant. She's a incredible adjuster as a chiropractor. She could literally become anything in the world except for a cook. She's not a good cook, and she will admit that. She will admit that.
He's looking around.
No, but she will admit she could. She could do anything except for that, and that's okay, because I do the cooking. But she knew that the most important thing was to be a mother. And now she's kind of delving into the business world, and she has a company called Wild Mamas, and is dedicated to fertility and to pregnancy and to raising healthy children. So, she's doing some of those passion things, but again, it's, the kids always come first, second, and third, and I support her and on the pedestal, for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, for those women out there that want to find a man like Jack who cooks, I don't know if you know this, but in the Samoan culture, the men cook, not the women. So find yourself a Samoan man.
And he probably likes fish.
Guarantee you, yeah, they plenty of fish. Yep, heck yeah.
Well, it really is, again, like, having these discussions beforehand, I think, is really important, like we said before. And also for the woman to kind of like really to stand up and say, I have my role in this family, and this is what my role is. Like, my role is to take care of the children. It's to defend the children, and you're there to play a supportive role of that. And if you're not supportive of that, then we're not going to have a good existence together. And so really kind of laying down those boundaries, because I will tell you, again, if I was against any of the things that my wife ever did, she would have just said, then I don't want this, but, you're free to walk out of the house. You're free to go, because this is not going to exist here. When we found that we had mold in the home we were living in 2018, she called me up on the phone, and it was just, just crazy stories that God has blessed me with in so many different levels. But she calls me up in 2018. She said, I found what is making me sick, and it's mold under the kitchen sink. I have left the house with the 3 children. I'm going down to my sister's. If you want to join us, that would be great. and kind of like intimating, like, if you don't, you're free not to join us, but this is where we're going to be. And of course I said, I'm madly in love. And of course she knows that I was, I went down to her sister's house, and that was the end of our Arizona stay, in 2018. And since then, it put us on the road. And as I talk to you and your listeners right now, as we talked before we started, I'm living outside in a tent. Because we will not.
Yeah, show us. Why don't you show it? Why don't you show it? Let's see it.
Well, I got some people in the background.
Oh, do you now?
So, but you can trust. You can kind of see that tent, over my shoulder over here.
We saw it before the podcast started. He gave us a little.
Living this way is very, very easy. It's very easy.
How much is your mortgage?
It's incredible, right? We're staying on a friend's property, so if you have friends, but. Listen, it's really such a blessing to be able to experience this. And I will say this, at the end of the day, I am a Jewish kid from the suburbs of Chicago. I am a child of privilege. My father did very well as a cardiologist. And if the Jewish kid from the suburbs of Chicago can live outside in a tent, anyone can. Anyone can. And we're not going to do this forever. We're going to do this until we build something that's safe for our family. We talked about this before. These wooden structures that everyone lives in, they're all contaminated, they're all damaged. You can deny it all you want and say it's not causing your health problems, and your husband can sit there and say, I'm not spending this money on this, and I'm not doing this. If you want to get healthy, you will get out of that situation, because you will never be. I said this at The Truth About Cancer in front of hundreds of thousands of people back in 2016. You cannot get healthy in the same environment where you got sick. You need to change up your environment. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to move to Costa Rica, but you need to change up your food environment, your house environment, the way that you appreciate sleep and sunshine and movement, and you have to change up your mental environment. And when you do all that stuff, that's the longevity strategy, and it's the only way to go. It's the only way you survive.
Well, I think that's a great.
I appreciate your voice. I appreciate your passion, and I appreciate you sharing your perspective, because it's powerful and insightful. So thank you so much.
Well, I promised, I want to give your listeners maybe just like one tip, because I could say, listen, better sleep, eat more seafood, get better relationships, and prayer and gratitude, and all these things. Just, if you could do one thing right now, it's get outside more often. The more time you spend outside, the longer you live. So if you like quilting, if I told you before I was doing some rainbow with my daughters, right? Get outside and do those things, and get better clothes, get better coverage. It could be cold. It's going to be cold, obviously in a lot of the country very soon. The more time you spend outside, whether you're walking or you're hiking or you're biking or just spending time in the natural light, it is. And it's free. That's is absolutely free, right? There's, the grass-fed bison so expensive. That is free. Embrace it, people. Get outside.
I love that advice. That is great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Wolfson, my son Corey loved wolves, and when I kept on trying to remember your name because I have name dysmorphia or something, but he's like, it's the wolf and son. And immediately, like, I don't know. I'll never forget your name. And I really appreciate what you said about moms.
Yeah.
Well, give me one more thing.
Yeah.
My father's loss created the man and the physician that I am today. So his death is not in vain. And the loss of your son created everything that you are right now, and the stuff that you're doing right now that undoubtedly help a lot of people. And if there is some grand master plan going on, this is all part of that plan. And that's why we just kind of keep going and keep getting that message out there, because we're going to help a lot of people when we share these kind of messages and really shouting from the rooftops. The time more than ever right now is just shout your truth, never be afraid, stand up for your rights, spread, your truth, and you're going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate you jumping on here, and appreciate your insight. And like I said, this is going to be a fun podcast to rewatch and share. So
thank you guys. Thanks
again. And we'll definitely reach out. Definitely going to get your wife on here. Now everybody's going to want to see this beautiful, brilliant woman. So
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Doc.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Vohn Watts, chiropractor and founder of Foundational Wellness, shares his insights on how the body functions as a whole system, along with the principles he uses to help people get on the path to better health. Please remember, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended to replace medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Every person is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with a qualified healthcare professional who knows your individual circumstances. Neither Dr. Watts nor this podcast is responsible for any actions you choose to take based on the discussions in these episodes.